It is now evening, Maddrift. Before anything else tonight, I wish to extend my heartfelt feelings of gratitude to our Queen for bestowing us with this honorable duty of distracting the feasting death, and express thanks to the Queen's Guard and Enchanters and Extinction Keeper Lours here from Queenstown for doing their work to keep us safe. I also want to apologize for how short last evening's narration was. It was in due part to a subtle test proposed by the enchanters that I frankly did not feel was necessary to share with the town, because I was worried how some of you might take it. The repeated narration of only a few minutes was to gauge how safe it is to remix and replay previous recordings. The familiar repetition of things the feasting death has already heard, and their effectiveness at keeping it distracted. With how little it seemed to impact its activeness observed by the patrolling Queen's Guard last evening, but the influx in complaints I received in person about the annoyance it caused most of you last evening, the enchanters and I have discussed not shortening the narration and instead allowing for more pauses that I have been tripping over my words to avoid recently. The good news hidden in this is that I can now read the stories I have planned with more dramatic pauses. I can build suspense that the tales in Dizivian Night Terrors are most likely intended to be read in, which should add quite a bit of atmosphere and make our evening narrations all the more enjoyable. Now, for what I am sure is on many of your minds, if the other barrage of complaints I got this afternoon are anything to go by, yes, the Dove Post announcement about homes being inspected is real and is currently happening. There is a good cause for it, despite the suddenness and your understandable worries. Extinction Keeper Lours is simply doing his job right behind me as I speak, and the Queen's Guard are simply doing theirs. These inspections are something the good citizens of Queenstown go through much more often than we do out here, as Maddrift has never undergone them at all, actually. That lack of practice is exactly why we are being forced to conduct them now at what many of you have voiced is a inconvenient time. You are correct, it is rather inconvenient with everything we are currently trying to do and put together and all of these new protocols, but it is a necessity nonetheless. Our previous town judge never enforced this, nor the one before him, nor before them, or any from what the town records show dating back at least the last 4 decades, and that is a problem, Maddrift. We are Dizivian citizens. We need to adhere to our Empress's rules. There is a silver lining in this, however, Maddrift. After the inspection of your home is complete, you'll be eligible to sign a petition I have begun drafting that requires remodeled buildings for all of Maddrift. If the recently demolished, old and disused Dove Post box is anything to go by, there are several structures within the town that should have been torn down some time ago and are lucky to still be standing. Our gracious Queen has already been accommodating towards us in our newly assigned duty, and I feel Maddrift has a good case to request total remodeling rather than just remodeling of the homes that require it. And I do say homes, but I do mean any building. So the tavern, the Sword Dessert, Clay Draft, our main herbalist, even the town judge's home, which I know some of you are probably thinking, of course I want my home remodeled. But no, I mean this for the good of all of Maddrift. Having stronger buildings will provide us more protection and offer a little bit more stability in case the feasting death ends up entering the town at any point. But with that bit of news aside, and the officials, must you do that now? I have to imagine the Sending Stone is picking it up loud and clear. Please. Thank you. Now then, we do have some good news, Maddrift. I have finally obtained a secretary. Ganjen has thankfully stepped up to the position and will begin setting hours where you can visit them in the office that is the area just inside my home, the judge's home, where you can face-to-face address your concerns or complaints or submit whatever paperwork you've been trying to give me that I have not taken from you. And they will be going through the suggestion jar. And soon enough, that means that a complaint jar that a few more of you have recently voiced, especially today, a desire that it should exist, you'll finally have it. And that will be wonderful for all of Maddrift. So I extend my wholehearted gratitude to everyone who applied to be my secretary that I couldn't accept, and I wholeheartedly welcome Ganjen to the position, and I hope all of you will as well. And in turn, it seems I do still have some unfortunate news to share. Sumi has given the opportunity much thought to be Maddrift's first citizen narrator for the evening. She even came to view the interior of the recording box from which I give the nightly narrations, but Sumi has decided in the end not to take this position. She regrets that her nerves have forced her to step back, but she did write me a short piece that she wishes for me to read that will introduce her to the town, and perhaps in the future, if she has another story she wishes to share, she'll be slightly less intimidated. I will read what she wrote to me verbatim, so there's no misunderstanding. My name is Sumi. I came to Maddrift with my family when I was still young. We were from Hostwin. My parents were mercenaries. We were traveling and our faith led us here. I lost them to the feasting death, and Maddrift has been my home ever since. I am uncomfortable speaking to so many people. Though I would be speaking only to a stone, I know so many of you can hear me. I am glad that Judge Tolphier can instead share a story from my homeland, Hostwin, about the Still Divide. Some parts are different from how I was told it to make it appropriate to share in Desivia without making it any less beautiful. I hope it brings Maddrift good dreams. And indeed, though in need of some minor wording adjustments so it could be read aloud over the nightly narration, the story Sumi brings us from Hostwin is indeed beautiful. It's less of a story and more of a description, a setting where a story might take place, full of possibility and wonder and well, I will read it and you may decide for yourself what it is full of, Maddrift. I do have a few more notes from her, but they are to be read after the story. And thank you, Sumi, for sharing this story with us. Both the story about yourself and the one I am soon to read about, the Still Divide. I am truly sorry that you lost your family to the feasting death, but Maddrift is pleased to have had you all these years since, and I am very grateful that you have come to view Maddrift as home, though it's not quite where you were originally from and probably not where you intended to stop your journey. But without further announcements to be made, I will now begin reading the story. It starts with dusk. Light set, as Desivia calls it, is the time when the bright sunny sky transforms over Hostwin into shades of summer flowers, pink and orange, faded blues and brighter purples, sinking into harmless, fiery red. The sun sets and the moon, a massive entity brighter than the sun over Hostwin nights, illuminates the land that never, never falls dark. Shadows creep across the grasses and rocky shore, reflecting deep underground in glassy caverns of endless sparks. Stars twinkle to life, swimming through the darkened sky and dancing around the beautiful moon. Pale blue glows across everything, including the sludge-like shade sea and the stagnant depths of the Still Divide. Across the star-speckled sky of a beautiful evening awaits the dark expanse of Zivia's endless night. The blackness of the other land, of our land, stretches into the water of the still divide at all hours except for one. In the hour after midnight, when morning starts but the light does not rise from the sun and remains from the moon, a bridge reflects in the thick water of the still divide. Stars rise to the surface like bubbles from a singing fish. Do you know what are singing fish, Maddrift? Small swimmers with translucent scales, invisible in the water and glass-like in the air, the water ringing through them like chimes in the wind. Stars rise to the surface of the still divide like bubbles from singing fish. The moon watches over them lovingly, guiding them with its soft pale light. The still divide, dark and quiet and reflective like glass, captures the connection between moon and stars in the sky and in the water, bringing them down to the ground where they do not belong, turning the stillness into something tangible within a thin layer of liquid to cover it, the unknown depth sinking below it. The moon bridge appears across the wide, uncrossable stretch of the still divide between the stars of Hostwin and the night of Desivia. The moon connects the land by the water. One may cross the moon bridge with any intent, slow and afraid, or mindful and appreciative, full of hope or full of fears. The moon does not discriminate. It will hold for any and all the stars scattered around each step across the ethereal bridge, never allowing themselves to be trampled upon, but always coming back to tempt the traveler to try again. The moon watches lovingly, never fading, always bright, illuminating the safe path to tread across the unsafe water, until the second hour after midnight. The moon bridge offers that choice. When it is not full, or when the hour passes, it simply stares down into the still divide knowingly, with no reflection, with no stars bubbling to the surface, and no bridge to be crossed. It stares and it waits, assured that someday again soon, it will shine light upon the patient darkness. In all of the Desivian literature I have read, few describe darkness as beautifully and sorrowfully as this story did. I've read it several times now, and I still see it differently, and it was an extra shine each time I visited again. Thank you deeply for allowing me to read this, Sumi. And, yes, the notes that you wished for me to read after the story was finished. I nearly forgot. The moon bridge is very important to my religion and most people of Hostwin. I hope you enjoyed it. It was quite pleasant, Sumi. I am inspired by this to invite anyone who has stories from outside of our lands here in Desivia to submit them for the evening narration. Mind you, they must not have any treasonous wording, or they must be easily reworded so that they can't be shared openly here. But I think it could be nice to have glimpses like this into the world outside of Maddrift, outside of our beloved Desivia entirely even. And if we got to hear more stories from elsewhere, there might be fewer complaints about the evening narrations. Though, of course, we still have the tome from Citadel Acclamations. They gracefully provided us with Desivian Night Terrors to read from. So, if no one else has a story to submit, there is always those. And with all that said, despite the swift timing of it all, I believe this is a good time to end this night's narration. Extinction Keeper Lours has much work to do, and it would be far too distracting for them to do it while I am still narrating. So, have a wonderful evening, Maddrift. We will now stop the recording and replay it.